Hello and welcome to Ames in Focus, the podcast that brings you closer to the people and projects shaping life in our city. I'm Bill Gebhart with Communications and Outreach at the City of Ames. Today we're talking about something we all use every day, our streets. From your morning commute to evening walks, streets are a big part of daily life in Ames. But behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes into maintaining and improving them. Joining us once again is Municipal Engineer Mindy Bryngelson. Mindy, welcome back.
Thanks, Bill. It's good to be here.
Okay, before we dive in, can you give us a quick refresher? Can you remind our listeners what your role is within the city?
Yes, I am the municipal engineer in the engineering division of Public Works, and we are responsible for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of our streets, our water mains, our sanitary sewer collection, and our stormwater collection systems.
And I know we've talked about that on the podcast before, but I just wanted to remind our listeners, you are the right person for us to be talking about. I'm glad to have you here to talk about streets. So let's start with the big picture. So when we talk about managing streets in Ames, what does that actually involve?
Well, people often think of streets as just pavement, but they're really one of the city's largest and most valuable infrastructure assets. In Ames, we manage about 250 miles of roadway, which translates into roughly 563 lane miles when you account for multi-lane roads. Managing the system involves much more than just snow removal and fixing potholes. It includes pavement preservation, reconstruction, drainage, curbs, sidewalk, traffic impacts, utility coordination, long-term planning, budgeting, and trying to maximize the life of every dollar that we invest. The goal is to apply the right treatment at the right time before a road fails.
And you said that was 250 miles of road in Ames?
About 215 miles.
215, and then how many lane miles was that again?
It is about 563 lane miles.
And so our listeners might remember lane miles from when we talk about plowing, because we always talk about plowing in terms of lane miles, because you have to plow every single lane on a road.
Yes.
Right? And so you're hitting a road more than once because it has more than one lane.
Correct.
So, okay, I know the city has recently started using a new system to help with that, something called the RMT Pavement Data System. So what is that and how does it work?
Yeah, so the RMT system, it basically turns normal city like passenger vehicles, not our snow plows or larger equipment, but normal city passenger vehicles into rolling pavement sensors. So in the past, we would have, the DOT would drive our streets every couple of years and give us some scores back. And, we just had the data that we would kind of work off. This new system allows us to continually evaluate our streets. It takes sensor readings almost every approximately 100 feet. And so what it's looking for is roughness, which it measures the ride quality and pavement deterioration. There's a gyroscopic sensor, which it detects vehicle movement and vibration patterns that can indicate surface defects, settlement, rutting, or rough pavement. And then about half of the vehicles, so those sensors are on about 20 vehicles, and about half of them have a camera related to them too. So with those, we're picking up imaging, and so we visually look at the conditions so we can review cracking, surface wear, and other distressed indicators.
So when you were getting this information before from the DOT, you were getting that, you said, once every 2 years.
Once every 2 years, and it was just like a score applied to a section of roadway.
So it just said, this gets a B. And you're like, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
Okay. And so now we're getting it more continuously. Plus, since we're in control of the data, we're actually getting those things that can help us to keep things improved.
Yes, we have a map, like a dashboard, and on the dashboard's a big map, and it shows the whole system, and then we can drill down into the roadways that are A's, which, those are good to go for right now.
Yeah, for right now.
All the way down to the F's, which I'm really, I'll look at those F's and be like, are these really F's? Maybe we should pass through a few more times. We started this collection back in October. And so there were some roads that we don't travel on that often. And some of the conditions that they picked up were snow conditions. So we haven't cut those out at this point. So this spring, we've really been kind of diving into let's make sure we get the entire system collected and then really look at, what are those PCI scores is what those are called. And, how much of our road is in good shape and how much does need some work rather quickly. And do we already have it planned in our capital improvement plan, or is it something that wasn't even really on our radar?
And so this really does sound like a true City of Ames approach, a data-driven approach, because we like our data here, right? So how does the system, and you sort of explained it with the dashboard, but how does the system then help you decide whether you need to do just a repair or a full reconstruction or leave it alone for a season?
Right. So if we're looking at specifically those D's and F's, those are past rehabilitation. Those are a reconstruction candidate for sure. And right now, you're looking at maybe 3 or 4% of our overall system that are kind of showing up that way at this time. The majority of our systems are A, B's, or C's. And those C's are the ones that if you can get in there and get some, patching or some, repair, crack sealing, different things done to those, even a mill and overlay, you could gain another 15, 20 years out of them.
So using the grading terminology, that's like the extra credit, right? You got a C, let's do some extra credit, get that up to a B.
Yes, that's a great analogy. I love it.
And so that grading system is really the way that you do it, but you do have specific data that goes along with each of those grading systems, as opposed to when we were with the DOT where it just had a grade.
Correct. And the truth is we can drive it like immediately after we apply a system and see how it improves.
Yeah. Oh, no, that makes a lot of sense because you are driving it frequently. Anyway, right?
Yes.
Okay. So from a resident's perspective, sometimes it can feel like a street is fine one year, under construction the next. So how do you prioritize what gets worked on and when?
Yeah, so we actually have, for one, we have various programs that we try to address something in each of those programs. And most of it's based on the street classification. So we have our arterial roadways, which is our big, main roads across town. You're talking about Lincoln Way, Duff Avenue, Grand Avenue.
Yeah.
And then we have our collector streets, which are kind of those streets that kind of lead into those arterials. And then we have our local streets. Our funding is distributed through those streets. So we'll look at, a little bit of arterial work, a little bit of collector work, and then we're looking at a little bit of more of our, what I would call our local streets. So those would be our asphalt program, our concrete program, seal coat program. So with all of those streets, our biggest enemy for a street is water, whether that's rainwater, snow, anything like that, and coupling that with our freeze-thaw conditions. So when you get water into those pavement systems, and then you have a winter where you have a freeze-thaw.
Like this last one.
Yes, it'll start popping up pavement sections. It moves the pavement around. Pavement moves naturally. Concrete cracks naturally. And so if you don't have those sealed up and that water gets down underneath, it just kind of wreaks havoc. And once it gets down to the sub-base or sub-grade, it's very difficult to rehabilitate anything at that point. That's when you're kind of seeing those big failures, lots of potholes, and you're looking at a reconstruction.
I also imagine that traffic plays a role into it. So you're talking about arterial streets versus local streets, whereas a road like Lincoln Way, which is traveled by so many people all the time, may not necessarily get to that D or F level before it does need to be reconstructed just because so many people are using it.
Well, that's true. There's a couple different factors with that. So traffic, for one, heavy loads, especially when you have heavy loading on a pavement that's already starting to fail, it's just going to fail more quickly.
Yeah, once you start to fail, you keep failing.
It just keeps going. And the heavier the truck traffic that's on it, the faster that's going to happen. And even the more vehicles that you were talking about earlier. So we kind of call it like a single axle equivalent. We'll take a big truck and kind of make that equivalent to how many single axle vehicles are going over that. And then we have a total number of axle loading, and that all plays a part in roadway deterioration.
So that leads me to my next question. What are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to maintaining a street system like we have here in Ames?
Honestly, we just really talked about most of it. It is that freeze-thaw cycle, heavy truck traffic, aging infrastructure, and even having areas that are being redeveloped that might have a lot of utility cuts through them. We have private utilities that come in when you talk about, Alliant, Mediacom, and they need to get their, fiber or gas across the road. They might cut a trench through the middle of it, things like that. Those are always our challenge on, keeping that road in good condition. And then, of course, it's the inflation and construction costs. Sometimes when we program in a street, we're looking out ahead about 5 years. And if prices inflate significantly, then there's times where we can't do what we originally wanted to do.
And I imagine as you're planning out 5 years, you're already imagining a little bit of inflation, but how can you even know what it's going to be?
Right. I mean, we use the standard, 3-4% inflation. Sometimes, we also have in there kind of a contingency factor just to cover some of the things that maybe weren't foreseen, especially when it comes to underground utilities.
And so I know we talked about this a little bit when we talked about our construction season, which is always our great episode, right? But for residents, is there anything that they should understand about why roadwork happens when it does, or what they might expect during construction?
Yeah, we understand that construction can be very frustrating. We try really hard to coordinate projects and utilities and schedules to minimize disruptions and avoid tearing up the same street multiple times. Sometimes that means doing work proactively while we're already have a corridor under construction rather than coming back a few years later. But the short-term inconvenience helps avoid bigger long-term problems and costs. So I think the biggest thing especially if it's a local street and it's in front of your home, is to know that you're going to get invitations to public meetings and opportunities to speak with the project manager and the designer on that project, and, express your concerns. And some of these things we can accommodate, some things we cannot, but some things we can accommodate, and we could phase the project in a way to minimize some of those impacts. But I really encourage just get involved, know when it's happening. We're trying to be a little more proactive with that too on the website. We have a new kind of map here the last year that shows what is under design. You may not have gotten any information on that project yet, but you can go to that map and see if there's something in your area that is under design or will begin design within the next few months.
And like you said, we're not really trying to be an imposition on people, although construction often is for a lot of different people, but we're doing our best to make sure that we're allowing people access to their homes. We're allowing people access to the rest of the city in everything that we do. And those public meetings are a great way to get information, but also to give your input to see what it is we can help with.
Yes, absolutely. And the biggest thing to know about those public meetings is we're not going to be able to make big design changes.
Right.
We've already established the budget, but we can do things to phase the project to assist with any mobility concerns or even some scheduling concerns that people have.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like the community to know about how we care for our streets in Ames?
I think residents should know that a tremendous amount of planning goes into maintaining the street system. Our goal is to use data, engineering judgment, and long-term planning to make the best possible investments for the community while keeping Ames safe and moving efficiently.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And before we go, Mindy, you've been a regular this season for us at least. So it's time for those rapid fire questions. We're going to call this the Streets Edition. Okay, here it goes. Asphalt or concrete streets?
Concrete.
Okay, because they longevity?
Yes, asphalt sometimes, I don't know if you've ever watched how that goes in, but they put it in kind of fluffy and then they roll it in.
Yeah.
And sometimes inadvertently, the grade isn't what we had intended. That happens. You might get a little dip in there, here and there. So I've always been more of a fan of concrete.
Yeah, it's flat and that's how it is?
Yes.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so what is the best time to drive that you like to drive? Are you a morning driver, late night driver?
Bill, honestly, for me, it's got to be early morning. I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And vision does kind of change,
Yeah.
and you're kind of like, I prefer having a little more light than what I used to.
Okay, so now this is kind of maybe more a technical one for you, but what is the most satisfying fix? To have a pothole repaired or a full resurfacing?
A full resurfacing. There's nothing like a brand new road.
It's so smooth, right?
Yes.
So smooth after it's done. Okay, I think I can get down with that one. What is your least favorite driving condition? Driving in the snow, in the rain, or in construction zones?
Snow.
Snow. I think I would agree with that. There's not as much control in that one, right?
Right.
Okay, what's one word to describe the streets in Ames?
Maintained.
And you do a good job with that. Well, Mindy, thanks again for joining us and helping us understand what goes into keeping Ames moving, literally. So we appreciate the work you and your team do every day.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to our listeners for spending time with us on Ames in Focus. The next time you're driving through town, remember, there's a lot more beneath your tires than just pavement. For updates on street projects and other city initiatives, visit cityofames.org and be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Ames in Focus is a City of Ames podcast.